REC Experience presents Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, Leadership with your host, Jas Takhar. The REC Experience podcast is now on air.
Hey. Thanks for being in the REC Experience. I'm your host, Jas Takhar, with your girl, Laura Elto Stewart. How are you doing, Elto?
Hey, guys. How's it going? I'm good. Holding in there.
Holding in there. That's good. I see like a little board behind you now. You're starting to adapt in this home office.
I'm great. I've finally decided we're in this for a little bit longer than I want to be. So I've changed I took the painting down and now this is like my little home office area. So I'm getting used to the idea of being at home.
It's actually quite fitting, right? Because the guest that we have on our viewers can see that we have a guest, and our listeners are gonna go through the introduction very shortly and really kind of allow her to kind of talk about her backstory. But she's an entrepreneur as well, and so I'm sure she's going through ups and downs as we all are, and trying to find creative ways to not only survive but thrive in the current situation. Jenny Bird, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Thanks, Jas. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Guys and gals listening and watching, go check out Jenny's Instagram profile, all things social. She'll let us know where kind of the best place to see what she's up to. But she is the founder of Jenny Bird, the jewellery company. You picked up a buyer like even before we even got started. Elto was on your Instagram page.
Guilty.
I already bought stuff.
Yeah, no, when I found out this morning that I was looking over the calendar and saw this podcast episode, obviously our viewers know that I'm not on every single podcast. I'm not included in every discussion that we have. In this one, I was like, I have to be here. This is right up my alley. We're talking jewelry. And I've been on the website like all day. I was probably supposed to be doing other types of work. So sorry, Jas, I was shopping. And during these times, a little retail therapy never hurt anybody.
Look, whatever keeps you guys laughing, anyone watching and listening, anything that's going to keep you in an optimistic state, positive state, I'm all about that. And if it is, what do you call it? Is it therapy?
Retail
shopping?
therapy.
Retail therapy. Sorry, if that's what it is, let loose. Make sure that you got your expenses and your statements on hand. You're not blowing the bank by any means.
Well, I can't make any promises, but at the end of the day, if I can get a shipment to my door that's not Lysol wipes and groceries, that's going to change the day.
I love that. I love that.
You guys, but I'm noticing I'm saving a bit of money, like how much I was spending before living out so much.
It's
Definitely.
so funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, wow, I'm not eating out as much. Usually Wednesdays and kind of Thursdays is for the core staff that's around us on a daily basis. We blow out and go nuts on lunch and stuff. And on Friday, 3:00, it might be a little bit more of a liquid lunch. And so we let loose, and that's happening a lot less. We're cooking a little bit more. We are not rationing by any means, but when you're at home, you're trying to figure out, you want to make less trips to the grocery store. So you're saying, look, let's stick to the 3 meals, some snacks, so on and so forth. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jenny. Before we go any further, tell my viewers and listeners, like, I'm a big comic fan. The guys and gals know that. I like to kind of know like the comic book strip story, so to speak. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself and how Jenny Bird, the jewelry company, started.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm just a dreamer. I know that because I tried it twice. The second time it stuck. I tried it when I was 25 to launch the company, and then went back to my day job. It was in marketing after a business degree. So fast forward, second trial, it worked out. That was 2008. So I have been through a recession before, which has proven to be very helpful now. And the second time it stuck, I just figured if I never gave up, I couldn't fail. And I wasn't from fashion. I just worked my way into it and learned as I went. I went to business school, so I self-taught myself as a designer. And now before, and still, I guess when they get thriving back, we were the best selling line at Nordstrom in our category, and just on fire around the world with over 500 retailers, the leading fashion boutiques in every city, over 300,000 people. tended to carry Jenny Bird and right now still do in their innovative digital, shopping offerings. So the company was built with 50% wholesale in mind and 50% e-com. So we built our brand awareness by selling into stores, and then through those communities of women and fashion influencers being the boutique owners in those cities, the brand awareness grew, and this is mainly in North America to start. We now have a presence in Japan and UK and about 14 other countries, very small still compared to the US and Canada's our biggest penetration. And so the wholesale market, our retailers really helped support our online, and we grew online in parallel. So right now our sales are 50-50, or right before COVID, I should say, they were targeting to be 50-50 for this year, e-com directly from our site. And then 50% through our wholesale retail partners. And our only big department store is Nordstrom. I really like keeping it as a boutique brand. It's a special brand to find, and those small independent retailers tell our story. So we've been building the brand since 2008, and we created 25 jobs downtown Toronto. We've had to downsize, which I'm open to talking about, to survive through this period. But we have a head office at Queen and Spadina, and then we attend all the fashion markets, mainly in New York and LA, and some internationally to distribute the brand in the wholesale fashion markets.
First and foremost, congratulations on all the success. Like, that's just amazing. Obviously I'm biased because you're the head office is in Toronto, and I just like, you're a fellow Torontonian, right? And so I'm definitely rooting for you. But that's just like the accolades that you mentioned, a huge shout out to you, and congratulations on everything. There's a couple of things that I hope that I can kind of take out, and thank you for mentioning that you're willing to kind of be open, and you said this off air, but you also mentioned it right now on air that you're willing to kind of share, and that for our listeners, like really, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, business people, sales people, and real estate investors. We all know that it all kind of ties in together. It's that being okay with failing and then getting back up again, trying it again. Before I get into that, and I know Elto probably has like 15 things that she wants to bring up as well, was there like a specific passion that you had for jewelry? Like growing up, was it like just like you were in love with the accessories? Like, how did that come about? Like, why did you pick jewelry?
I'm into fashion accessories overall. I started actually with handbags in 2008, and then when the recession hit, it was really hard to sell bags as an independent designer when the Gucci's were $500. But my bags had custom hardware on it. I had learned to cast, so I kind of stumbled into it because I was learning the casting process, and then I realized that my biggest collection at home was all this vintage jewelry. I'd been flea marketing for years. I grew up rurally in a small town, and I just love vintage. In my small town, Elora, Ontario, I don't know if you guys know it, it's near Guelph. I grew up there, and we had a lot of flea markets people would come in for. And I realized that jewelry was a passion that was right under my nose, and I pivoted to jewelry because it was like lipstick in a recession at the time. A $95 necklace was a really nice pick-me-up. And it made the company, it allowed the company to survive instead of fold in 2009. And I kind of followed that ever since. It was a natural design language for me. It came out of me easier. It just kind of was, I just followed what felt natural. And I realized in the market, there wasn't a lot of clean metal, sophisticated fashion jewelry that was really well made. It was like filling a void. It wasn't super cheaply made like a Zara or an H&M piece. But it wasn't like a Lanvin necklace either. It was still $100 and very chic and clean metal. There was a lot of ornamented, crystally beaded bib necklaces and things that just weren't my aesthetic. So it just took off, and I'm a creative that's also a CEO. So I enjoy both hats, and it enabled me to follow the market demand. I don't have an ego around my idea. I just followed, like, the market was pulling it through, and I realized that there was a demand for what I was doing. And that's, like, to your point, through this period, I think going to be a critical skill set to do at this time again as well, to be willing to.
So I'll chime in here and just sort of mention that I've been, as I mentioned earlier, I've been perusing your website, and it's interesting that you mentioned, that you grew up in Elora. I think obviously taking a look at some of the jewelry, although there's a lot of seemingly urban pieces, there's actually a lot of pieces that sort of speak to natural settings and not like a concrete jungle. So kudos to you, because I think you know, you mentioned that it's not your aesthetic, but it can be very pleasing to a lot of different people. So please go check it out. There's certainly something there for everybody, for sure.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if I answered your question, Jas, but
Yeah, for sure.
and I just love it, and I love wearing it, and it turns out it's a great thing, better than handbags as a business, because it ships really small, right? We used to have a store order 30 handbags, and that was like a massive carton, because you can't squish them. They have to be, you know.
Right, you got to look at the logistics, right?
Which I didn't actually think of doing until it was like kind of a happy thing to realize one day that we were shipping in little boxes, and that was amazing.
I hope so. I hope our listeners caught something that you said, because what really stuck out was that you said that it was really under your nose the whole time, the jewelry, right? Like the jewelry business, you getting into this type of business.
Yeah.
So many things as we sit at home now, and going through what we're going through in just like in self-isolation, in the thoughts that we're having the problems that are coming up. There's a lot of opportunity right underneath your nose, like just to try to solve a problem. I think it was John Maxwell that said that if you want to become a millionaire, become more of a problem solver. Just find problems, find solutions to those problems, and you'll have more than you ever imagined, because most people are always thinking and talking about the problem. There's not a lot of people finding solutions.
Yeah, and I think in parallel to that, there's a real necessity when you're done your crisis mode of saving your entity and whatever you need to do in terms of, you know, cost saving or just managing your cash and making sure you can stay alive. After that, there's a necessity to mentally look at it and really look at it as in a new, right? Like as a new business in a new time, and to really, I guess, my main thing that has been very helpful to me in this time is the actual proactive mental shift of letting go, just letting go of what was here before, of everything I thought was important, of everything I thought we were doing that was important, everything about the brand that was important, everything I thought was our competitive differentiator, just like let it all go out the window and look at the business as a new business in this now new climate. And if you have that mentality of being really, instead of holding on and waiting, like, when's it going to be back to normal? It's not going to be back to normal ever. If then it opens you up to say, you know, it's really been to find exactly what you said, to find the opportunities that are really inherent in a crisis, and to find these hidden skills and capabilities that your team and you probably have. Like, I think it's that's the biggest advice to give, is that letting go, completely letting go.
That letting go, even as you were saying it, it felt good, because I'm picturing people like letting it, like I'm sitting right in front of my window right now, and it's like letting it go through the window. And now you get to realize, and I think you'll come to realize, that opportunity is everywhere. You just need to get in the way of it. But now you have that possibility of it, rather than everything kind of feeling like it's right in front of your face. And I know, Laura, you feel like that sometimes too, just with even tasks, right? And it's understandable. We all feel like that, but you can speak to that as well.
Well, everyone's faced with decisions and problems that they've never sort of faced with before, and we're kind of all like, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't have the experience. I have nothing to draw on to tell me what the right way is to do about that. And some people take longer to sort of come to that place of acceptance than others. Definitely, I think it's true to your entrepreneurial spirit, because that's kind of innate in you, just to say, look, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be hurdles. That doesn't come easily to everybody. Definitely.
I think one thing, if you're trying to having a hard time, even like maybe you should change product lines or come out with a new product or change your price point entirely, or you're feeling like, oh my God, what will people think if our company does this sort of pivot right now, right? People get hung up on what will people think. But I think a nice tip is to know that at this time, it's never been more free. People will be celebrated for being inventive. No one will be judged for things they try. Like, no one. Everyone is like rallying behind each other and support more than ever. It's also,
and whether that's you as a business owner, just you as a person, like I get the feeling that a lot of people at the end of this, they're going to come out and say, I didn't even like my job anyway. And they're going to go down a whole new different path that they never saw themselves doing, just because this allowed them that time to really reflect, right?
Yep, totally. Like I said, everything being anew, I think. And to not judge yourself for what was there before. It's just like, it's such a free, it changes your mindset from like fear and into and into opportunist, I guess.
I totally agree with you, Jenny. I mean, I say it all the time that you can't feel fear and gratefulness at the same time. It's impossible. So if you are fearful at one point, try to switch that mindset to being grateful. And some have maybe more than others to be grateful for, but wherever you're sitting, especially if you're listening to this or watching this,
Yeah.
really, like, let's have some perspective. Okay, you might have even lost your job, but you still have the ability to listen. You probably are going to get a meal today. And I might, like myself, I probably don't eat 3 meals a day anyways. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can, you have a meal, you're good. Like, we all have got, like,
You could use to skip a meal or two, eh, Jas?
you know what I'm saying, Laura? Like, you know that, right? Like, and so if we have, like, having perspective is so important, right? In situations like this. I did want to go back really quickly, Jenny, to 25-year-old Jenny for a second, because you said that's where you kind of had your first like, not your first failure, but a failure of, like, within business.
Yeah.
What happened? And then more importantly, what got you off the canvas to try it again?
I got a taste of working for myself. So, that was the drive to try it again 5 years later. But what happened at the time is I just at 25, I had a small amount of resources financially. I was a romantic idealist about sewing my own handbags and wholesaling them, and I made them all myself and tried. And there was not enough profit in the product line, essentially.
Got it.
I quit my career and I was on and it was a successful marketing career at an ad agency. I was on EI pretty quickly. And I just couldn't, my parents were like, okay, we're not helping. Like,
you're on your own, girl. Fly, bird, fly.
I crawled.
No pun intended.
Yeah, totally. So I literally crawled back to the company. And I was like, didn't work. Can I come back? Luckily, they took me back. And then 5 years later, I turned 30 and had a promotion to VP, and I was doing really well. And I was like, oh my God, one more promotion and I'm going to be in golden handcuffs. And I'm going to value more working for myself. Like, I really wanted to shape my own destiny, have my own day schedule, like, just not have to book vacation days with someone, and ultimately have what could be financial independence far and beyond what I could have in a career. And to do that, creating something, I was like, I've got to be able to do this if anyone can do this. I know I'm creative and I know I've got a business mind. So I saved up the money again, and I just tried it again at 31.
We talk a lot about finding your passion and the importance of it. And I hope, again, anybody who's listening or watching, you're starting to see a pattern over close to 100 episodes now, if not more. I think we might have even talked. This might be our 100th episode, actually. So thank you for joining us, Jenny, for our 100th episode. If it becomes the 100th episode, I have no idea sometimes now, like, even in terms of days. But the pattern is and being a fly on the wall with conversations that we're all having for this podcast is when you find that passion, you could see, like, you could tell when you're telling the story, Jenny, and because we're doing the Zoom now, like, I'm watching intently, and you could tell that, like, you smiled, like, your smile was much bigger when you were speaking about possibly being in golden handcuffs. Like, I could almost feel like your shoulders drop, but then you spoke about finding that passion again, restarting it, and you can tell you kind of perked back up again. And for our listeners who can't see that, that's what will happen for you. When you are day in, day out, working on your passion, you realize, and Jenny, please comment on this, Laura, please comment on this, that you chasing the money, like, you start to know and realize that you're not even doing it for the money anymore. You're doing it for the freedom. You're doing it for the ability to create jobs, create jewelry, create whatever that specific passion would be. But now the money actually starts to follow you because you're bringing so much value to the marketplace. You're no longer chasing it.
Yeah, no, it's never a strategy to chase. That's interesting in fashion, because your choices in your product being less quality for more profit, your choices in a lot of things can be centered around chasing money. Versus creating a beautiful brand experience, in a conscious company, like all these things that are really, in the end of the day, like what you're proud of. So that's been that's been my focus for sure. I think it's worth it to say too, for people that like, you hear people talking that have had success, and it's a long road. Like there are days where you are like, oh my God, like I know that if I don't give up, I can't fail. That's just pure logic. So that's what drove me on. But there's going to be like a super number of times when you just need to take a break, and you just need to like give yourself space and know that you still love your idea and you're still committed to it, but you need a day off from it, because if you really love it, it's also emotionally draining to have those setbacks. And especially now, like if you're not having, like now is a very, very traumatizing experience for human beings. So if you're having a day where you're feeling like you just can't be in that opportunistic, there's opportunities in a crisis mindset, if that is actually driving you nuts, then just take a day break. Don't try to, you know, because in this time, I think we need to also recognize that like, we will need a bit more time and space than others. Like I've had to take days where like, I know I'm going to pick up the company, steer it in a new frontier, get it poised to recover and thrive through this and after this, but I just can't do it today.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head over here because I think us as human beings, we can be quite hard on ourselves, harder than we are necessarily on other people. And we kind of have to give ourselves that acceptance and that permission to sort of like take a break, relax. That doesn't mean quit and throw everything away that you've worked hard on, but just, you know, step away from it. And I think we ask a lot of the entrepreneurs that come on our podcast about how they sort of balance it all. And I think what we're really seeing is during this time is now everyone's home, and people who have spouses and children, and they're trying to really balance everything, and it doesn't leave as much time as maybe they had before. And I was actually hoping that maybe you could touch on this, because as I was stalking you on Instagram earlier today, it appears that you have 2 children and a spouse. So I was just wondering if you have any tips or strategies for people who are in similar circumstances where, you know, you're kind of juggling your passion that you probably want to spend most of your time on every single day, but at the same time, other people that you love, and how you juggle all that.
Oh my God. It's like literally before this call, I was in the driveway going, I have to go on a podcast right now. My 5-year-old son who is having his meltdown, which like, I get it. Like he misses his friends. It's, you know what, being at home with kids, being at home with young kids, I have, as you said, Laura, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, is a massively different experience than being at home without kids. And I don't know, there's no juggle. There's just, you can't balance it. I don't even think I'm juggling. I used to juggle. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so proud that I actually showered and put makeup on and jewelry on for you guys. Like you made me.
I put makeup on today too, so we're.
Well,
no,
we all.
I think there's coping. You just cope, you know.
Yeah.
And
how do you juggle it on, you know, pre-COVID? Sort of like I was reading that your husband works now for the business as well. That's, you know, you're with your spouse all day, every day. I imagine. I'm sure that's pretty tough. And how do you balance sort of roles and responsibilities?
Oh, so that is updated. Before COVID, we decided to part ways in the business, basically to save our marriage.
Okay.
The business grew so much, so fast, that all we were doing at home was to talk about work. And we had these beautiful young children. And I don't mean save our marriage in that, like, you know, we have a wonderful, strong relationship. We weren't investing in it. All we were doing is talking about the company because it was just so all consuming because our growth was so turbo. And it came down to a point where we were like, oh my God, like I said, how are you? Or put on your favorite song lately, or like booked a special date for you. Like it was just so all consuming. And so we actually, that was the best move for us. It was really wonderful to grow the company for the first few years together. So that had changed about 8 months ago.
Wow, that takes a lot of maturity to come to that conclusion, and then to actually act upon it too, because I'm sure there was a lot of fear in the separating of that as well.
Yeah, but you know what, it was marriage number one, family number one. It meant that, you know, the business needs for trips wasn't on both of us as well. So if I needed to go for a show in New York or a market, then I knew that Adam was home with the kids. Or also what, you know, he jumped onto my dream train for years. So what is his now, and how can we support his? that needs to be explored for him, which is super exciting. But you do that if you're embroiled in the operations of a growth company. So we're pretty excited for the next stage for him and the company. It's also complicated in a company with a spousal relationship at the top. One thing we learned really well is there has to be one decision maker for the staff's sake. There's this ultimate weird dynamic that you can't avoid no matter what. Like, oh, I talked to Jenny about it, it said it's okay. And well, they talked to Adam about it and it's maybe not okay. Like, because her husband.
And that's like kids, right? They'll go to the one parent that they think is more
for sure.
Awkward because they would know that like it's not something that I would like, but he would like, or vice versa. So it was good for the company too. We just knew that it was time, like just pragmatically, it just worked on all sides. So, but I wouldn't say we did because, imagine growing a fashion company, two people that have never worked in fashion, like it was such a fun experience and it was so cool that he was looking for support.
It's funny that you mentioned with staff, right? Because I have a business partner. It's not my spouse. And him and I have been together in business for 15 years almost now. And we had to kind of divide and conquer, so to speak, especially for the staff's sake, because it's that exact same situation happened all the time. When I spoke to Jas, he said it was okay. Simo said no, or vice versa. Simo said it was okay, but Jas said no. And we're like, okay, what's going on here? Okay, now we got to draw kind of a line in the sand in our roles. So just for the staff's sake, because we're giving out two different messages, and it's just it might be small things, it's not really high level, but just on small tactical strategies. And it just wasn't panning out for us. And so we made that decision almost about 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago, where because as we were growing, we started to at one point it was one person, that's easy, but now we're at 10 support staff, 25 realtors. It made it a little tough to give out mixed signals.
That's great. Congrats.
Thank you. Well, Laura's our director of sales and marketing.
I was there to witness all of it.
Yeah,
all of the struggles, and
sure.
It's obviously growth is what you're aiming for as a small business owner, but at the same time, there is something that's really beautiful about being such a small company, because you're all kind of in the same room together at the same table, working on everyone's input has equal weight and importance. And then you get to kind of a point where you have to have roles and responsibilities and a bit more of a hierarchy. So you lose kind of, the touch of a real startup.
Yeah.
Well, we joke about it, like the touch of it's like adulting, and it's kind of boring. like we like the startup mode, and we're all having we're just trying everything.
Now there's manuals when people join, and what is this?
Like last year, I'm like, I need an onboarding handbook for employees.
It's the exact same thing. Yeah.
It's actually why we kind of had Laura at that role, because she's so good in organization. I mean, you leave that definitely with me. I'm not that person. I like to.
Oh no, we would never have an onboarding handbook if it was left to Jas.
Exactly. I like to come up with the ideas, be the creative, do this, and kind of go from there. So your team. So how many people did you start with? How many people did you have on your team? I apologize. Pre-COVID.
24.
24.
We just
awesome.
Onboarded 3 new hires, actually. Like literally.
During this time?
No, just before.
I apologize. Okay.
The MBA and
tough time. That's tough. Yeah.
And so you said that you had to, and not to get into specifics by any means, but you made the decision to let go of some people, lay them off. Like, what's kind of the situation there?
Yeah.
And really, what was the thought process behind it?
But the first phase was, I would say, it's the survival phase mode, I called it. Once I was done survival mode, I could plan, like, I could turn my attention to the company that was left and how that should be run in this new world. Survival mode, yeah, it was honestly just identifying risks, right? Like for us, it was jewelry we had shipped to stores that owed us money that probably wasn't coming in anymore. How much? It was cash in and cash out, a very, very benign, straightforward look at how much cash we had in the bank and how long of a cash runway we had, given the current, and so we started by saying, okay, what are all the unnecessary expenses, which we started to cut as we saw this virus coming. And I should have actually known sooner, because I was also dealing with supply chain issues with overseas suppliers because of it. And now that when in hindsight, I probably, would have predicted this had I not been managing that crisis. That was our first crisis. But so just identifying non-essential expenses. Like we were about to do some beautiful new office furniture, so canceling that and going down on expense line items until there was nowhere else to go but payroll. We had to figure out how to survive through what I figured was at least 3 to 4 months of sales being significantly lower. And then where the sales are coming from is now no longer wholesale but e-com. So what team made sense to keep? And if you know your team really well, you can cancel it and reshape it quickly. Like this is just a practical standpoint of like what team members would be best to serve that, to make sure that we get the revenue we need that we can get at this time, just keep the company alive. So priority was companies there for people to be hired back to. And that was a very pragmatic approach. We lost our entire wholesale business for now. It will come back, as you know, like brick and mortar stores are closed. So big risks for us was a substantial amount of funds that were coming in that were no longer coming in for accounts receivable for jewelry we'd already shipped. And then we had planned inventory that was coming from our factories to support our projections for the year. So getting that down as hard as we could while keeping our factories alive, because you have to consider like my philosophy is to work with your partners through this time and not against them, and go through it together. And so we are projecting to probably be about 35% of sales this year from original projections. So we will be down, and that's if we do well. It's fashion, unfortunately, with wholesale. Once stores have excess inventory, it takes a long time for that cycle to pick back up and for them to be comfortable ordering inventory ahead and outlaying cash. So in now moving into the next phase of like our innovation of this time, we're working on how we supply retailers with inventory, access to our inventory without them having to purchase it up front.
Okay. Yep.
It's a low risk to them, but they still act as agents. We still support them in the process. So we're working on a new wholesale model, at least so that we can support our sales agents and our boutiques around the world until we get through this.
Sorry, in terms of your online initiative, has that changed? Like
Yep.
how you were running? Okay, and is that just why does that change so much? Because we're still able to sell online.
Yeah, just from a standpoint of like looking at how the climate has changed right now, and this is short term, but right now our retail partners are mass discounting. So we were forced into discounting somewhat. We have to still protect our core catalog. There's a reason why our prices are what they are. It's a good value already, but to be relevant, we do have to offer more value, whether it's a gift with purchase or, for my birthday, I sent a gift out that was any piece for 50, or you missed this, Laura, any piece for half off. It was like any piece you want for half off, happy birthday from me. It was last week.
Happy belated birthday.
Happy belated. More importantly.
Yeah, because we recognize also that, first of all, we were thanking our community from every order from day one by doing that. But online strategies have totally changed. Right now, we have a huge opportunity, for example, in recreating the gifting process in person. Like how do we be an incredible gifting provider, right? Like how can we gift to your mom or your sister when you can't go see her on her birthday? How can we make that Jenny Bird gift when she opens it a really beautiful experience with your note in it? And how can we make that even better? How can we make that that note in your handwriting? Or, we're working on those things that normally wouldn't have taken a front seat in innovation, but now are most important. So
I love like the questions you guys are asking yourself, like that you're asking yourself, Jenny, but obviously your team also, I'm sure, is helping out with that, because we could all sit here and say, why me, why this, why is this happening? And then we start to focus on that. But where you're focusing on, how can we make the gifting experience better? Like just that question in itself now will spur on a bunch of ideas in your own head, your team's head, and you'll be able to come up with a lot more creative solutions, as I'm sure you already have.
Yeah, and many that probably won't just be used, during this time. You're probably going to take a lot of these creative ideas and say, why didn't we do this before? Sometimes it takes something big like this, right, to get the creative juices flowing.
Totally. I think that's where you like what you're talking about, you shift from victim to possibility mindset to possibilities mindset. And when you're ready, when you're having a good day.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, look, I mean, one of the best tips that you already gave and was around, like not being so hard on yourself, because it's okay to take a day off, get away from it, and with the intention and the understanding that it's actually going to help you the next day, because you're going to be able to come at a problem with more clarity. And so like you essentially wrap that up in a Jenny Bird exclusive for us. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to maintain, as you are being adaptive, but identify the things. And I have this list here of strategic imperatives that no matter what or how long, we know that this will end, right? Like the good news is we know it is temporary. We just don't know how long it's going to be. So what do we need to keep going no matter what, so it's poised to thrive after this? So for us, it's some initiatives we had going that didn't make the expense cut, because they're very important for the company to be there when we come out of this. They're like super and like critical things,
Now, in terms of your team, how are you, like the team that's around you now, how are you staying in touch with them? What's kind of the messaging?
Yeah, how are you keeping them motivated?
Yeah, great point.
I think, you know what, this is like I said before, this is such a personally traumatizing time for people, for everybody. That's why I also think it's more important. It's not just like a terrible hurdle that happened to one particular company and now you have to decide to take a break and when you're ready to fix it. Like everyone's dealing with their own personal stresses, right? Whether they're mentally well at home, whether they're worried about their parents, whether they have kids around, whether they are worried about, I don't know, their cousin who's a nurse. Like there's just so many personal stresses. So my big advice for team management right now is just to give everyone space. And like the team knows from me, productivity is not the priority right now. Like the wellness of the team is a priority. So we have like, a guide around like, hey, let's try to be online together from 10 to 3 during the day. But if you need to like step away, if you're just like not feeling okay, or if the news has you spinning and you need to go sit and meditate or whatever you need to do, have a walk or whatever, just tell your team that you need a break and you're off. Maybe you had an emotional conversation with your parents or whatever it was, right? So that's a big thing. And then just being conscious of the fact that I am wired this way. It's why I'm an owner and a founder. Not everyone is wired this way. So I need to like meet them where they are. And I had a first mindset conversation over Zoom with the team when we had like survived and we were ready to move on, and the path forward was like, I was ready to go and innovate, and they weren't ready. Like they were grieving, and we were all grieving personally for the world we just had and we lost, and they were grieving for colleagues, and it sucks,
I mean, Laura, you just wrote a blog on the 5 stages of quarantine, and
yeah, I called it the 5 stages of quarantine, which is really just playing off of the 5 stages of grief. And we're not, some people are grieving people, of course, but most of us are just grieving this life that we were so accustomed to and that really got stripped from us in such a short period of time. And it's not like I went to work on Monday and then Tuesday I was not going to work anymore. So it's not like I had any plans in place, and you kind of, you're left to your own vices, really. And unfortunately, I think it brings out a lot of people's insecurities that are already inside of them in moments like this. And I do think, not being the leader of REC and watching our leaders, Jas and Simos, sort of navigate working with people, and what motivates one person on a regular day is different than what motivates somebody else, let alone something like this. So kudos to you, I think, for recognizing that everyone really is going to be different in this time, and you have to be sympathetic to them.
Yeah. And it's really hard when you are like an emotional, sort of intuitive leader to not be in the room with them. And like, you can kind of tell if someone's struggling on Zoom, or you can tell if they're having a good day, but it's not the same. Like, I feel like I don't have the same ability to like hold space for them. And
it's funny that you meant my guys and my listeners have heard me say that to my guests a lot, but like this, like it really is, this is meaning a lot. I don't know if it's because of my fashion sense and everyone else's fashion sense. That was a complete joke. Everyone knows I don't have any fashion
Jazz has
sense, but
none.
I have no fashion sense. I do think we're kindred souls here, Jenny. And the reason is because that was the toughest part for me. And it's still till this day is the toughest part for me, because when we're physically all together, I can tell when someone's having a bad day. I know what I can reverse engineer it most of the time, where we also have an open 10 to like 9:30ish in the morning to about 5:30ish. We kind of have a running Zoom. And so right now the rest of the team is in the virtual offices, and they come and go as they please. I come in, like everyone kind of does what we normally would do physically, but that's what I'm missing on a regular basis, is like, I know if Elto's having a bad day, I know Tyler when he's just off, or Luke when they're off. It's like, hey guys, let's go
Jazz,
for a walk.
normally you just get me food when I'm having a bad day, and I don't think
That's
you've
easy.
delivered any food to my house.
Yeah.
Right?
You generally just get hangry.
But
Yeah.
you need to deliver some food, Jazz.
I know.
So what do you do?
So,
You leave your office. Is there like a Zoom room you leave open for a certain amount of time people can come in and out of?
yeah, that's all we do. So it's exactly like how we sent you this link. So I think it's like you might want to take it and run with it as well, which is we just have one open link running all day, like 9:30 to the 5:30 kind of slot. And then for us to do this podcast right now, this is a separate link. But the guys and gals are back in the virtual, and I have two set up at the same time, which is the sales, my core sales staff, and then the media squad. They kind of run separate.
So they can like chat when they feel like it.
And that's what I found.
Like just leaving it on while you're doing your work. And then just knowing it's something about seeing somebody else also working, and perhaps it's different when you're not the owner of a company. You don't, this isn't necessarily all the staff's big dreams and hopes in life, what they're doing. Right. And there's something about, so they don't necessarily have the motivation to get out of bed. Like, let me get to work and do, focus on my dream. It's like, oh, this job I have to do some days. And I think just being there and seeing each other working kind of brings out, that social pressure, which is a good enough reason to get motivated. And then what you realize is at the end of the day, when you've actually accomplished something, whatever the reason was that you did it, you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I got something done today, right?
Especially because of us, the way that we're set in, like we have my office and shared with Laura, which is really turned into a podcast studio, but we have one long table and 5 of us sit around it. And then across from us is where the media squad sits. So we spend a lot of time with each other. And so once we were all working from home, that was lost. And so we also came up with all of our creative ideas that way, because we're throwing stuff off of each other. I think a lot of it was just the fact that it's so open between us that we make fun of each other. No, we don't take it too far, but we like to razz on each other.
I miss making fun of Jazz.
Like I'm generally the brunt of every joke, and I like that because it gives everyone an outlet, and I'm pretty easy in that sense. But more importantly, it was like, from my perspective, I didn't have any sounding boards now. Like, I'm speaking to myself, thinking about ideas, rather than being able to throw it off somebody and them saying, hey, Jazz, remember we tried that, it didn't work, or okay, let's try that. And so for the last, I'm going to say about 2 weeks, I think, Laura, we've been doing this, just the amount of ideas we've come up with. In fact, and
the amount of productivity has definitely gone up. And I think just people doing the work and the joy that they're getting out of doing it has also gone up.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so I always like to leave, Jenny, my listeners and viewers, you gave us a lot of tips. So for you to pull one out, I'm going to actually put Laura on the spot first, because you gave us so much value. Okay. Before I go down that route, and it can come, just so you know, from any perspective, mindset, tactical, entrepreneurship, any of the struggles you've been through, failures. I did want to say that once this is all over, we definitely want to come into your office and take some real pictures. I'm a big hugger, and so I need that. Right. And so I hope you're going to be fine with that even after this is all over. But we definitely want to bring you more value, and actually come into your place and take a look. We'll bring our video people there as well, and as long as you're okay with that.
Absolutely, we'd love to have you. It's
I
we
appreciate that.
opened a shop. It's just by appointment because we don't have a storefront in Toronto, so it's our storefront. You just you can make it by appointment and come in and have a personal styling, nice coffee, and play in the jewelry store that we've built. It's really beautiful.
And for anyone who's listening and watching, guys, like we talk about supporting local businesses and someone that's like Toronto native. If there is a birthday coming up, if there is an anniversary coming up, go take a look at Jenny's website. We will definitely have all the links in the description. She's not hard to find. Just kind of, Google her and make sure you go take a look at everything that the company's up to. Laura, to you, what's your one tip for our viewers and listeners today?
So I think what I got mostly out of our conversation, what I've sort of related it to what we've been doing the last 4 weeks, is to really just get creative with your partners, the people that you work with. Try to find unique ways to come up with solutions to these problems. And at the end of the day, recognize that we're all kind of in this boat together. And so by you withholding money, say like as we work in real estate, as a tenant not paying their rent, now maybe that landlord can't pay their mortgage. And so there's ripple effects to some of the decisions we make. And so try to be mindful of everyone down the supply chain, whether it be in your personal life or in your business model. And then I do want to say that I'm super excited that I'm soon going to be known as a bird girl, because that's a thing. Once you have your first piece of jewelry, you're a bird girl. I'm going to be part of the bird girl club. So that's coming my way. When I get out of this house, I'm going to get to sport my jewelry.
Yeah, you're going to join the flock.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the branding of that. Jenny, over to you. What's the one tip that you can leave our viewers and listeners with today?
One tip. I just think know that you're going to return to growth. My strategic plan is 3 phases. The first one is AIR, which stands for Adaptive, Innovative, and Resilient. That's the phase we're in now until we're out of quarantine. The next phase is recovery. That's when my sales are what they were in 2019. These are indicators to know that I'm on the path to the third phase, which is to my return to growth. And my biggest tip is to chart that out and know that that is coming.
Wow. I asked for one. You gave us more than one. That's just who you are, obviously. You just bring more value than you're asked for. So thank you for that. My tip today, guys, is the difference between being positive and being optimistic. Knowing that there's, if you go into your backyard and you see a lot of weeds in your backyard, it doesn't do you any good to just continuously say that there's no weeds in there, because there is weeds. Being optimistic is being positive about the future. And so if you can start to have the mindset of being optimistic, you'll start to see that the possibilities are endless. The opportunities, I've said it before in this podcast and so many other times, the opportunities are everywhere. It's your job to get in front of them, not find them. So start having the mindset of being optimistic, because the future is positive. Ladies, thank you so much for making me look so good today. I really appreciate that. Okay, start with there.
We need to get you a chain, the big link one.
Actually, our air traffic control guy, Tyler, he's all about that. Tyler's going to love that. Shout out to Tyler Wahlberg. You can definitely bring my game up, Jenny. I'm all ears. Guys, thank you so much, Jenny, to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, being so open with us and my viewers and our listeners. And guys, as I said before, go check out the store. Just like, if you have nothing else to do, just browse at least. It might bring a smile to your face. And ladies, you might just get to be part of the flock. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
This has been the REC Experience Podcast with Jas Takhar, an REC Canada production.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please take a second right now to subscribe and follow us on whatever podcast platform you're watching or listening. It means the world to me. Thank you.